Interaction charts. How to know and paste what your players know. This is me, B-DeshiDev for ThinkyCon 2024. So let's start with who I am. I'm a hobbyist new developer who's been making small games for a few years. I've made a few puzzle games where the focus was on mechanics that intentionally break the game. So this is a previous game, Control Override, and one of the things you can do is then grow the platform so that you're inside of it, and using that physics bug, you can bypass the lasers. So this is an example of using intentional physics bugs as mechanics in Control Override. And in my current game, Compress Space has a space folding mechanic, which you can see demonstrated in the GIF. As you might expect, this mechanic breaks the game in half in a good way, and the game is built around that. So as my games feature weird mechanics, tutorialization is something important to nail, and this talk is about several design tools I'm using for a Compress Space for this purpose. The background of this talk is that a month ago I was in the exploratory phase for development for Compress Space. I made about 50 puzzles across different mechanics, but I wasn't sure how to present them. So my first thought was to use difficulty charts. In most puzzle games tend to have a saw or sine wave like difficulty curve, where you have a set of levels based on some mechanic or something, and the difficulty starts from low to high and in peaks, and after peaking it drops off at the next set of levels, which introduce a new mechanic or something, and then it repeats that pattern across the whole set of levels for the game. However, I had a lot of mechanics, and some levels combine multiple mechanics together. Level A and B can be closed difficulty-wise while still having different mechanics, but it might not make sense to put them sequentially. So my next thought was to have mechanic level difficulty chart. I'd have separate difficulty charts for mechanic. For example, in the first level set, the green mechanic is introduced at lower difficulty and it peaks at the end. And in the level set 2, the red mechanic is introduced at lower difficulty and it peaks, and the green mechanics is used as well. And however, it is used as a different difficulty level from the level set 1. However, this still had a problem. It wasn't granular enough for me. So one way of thinking about mechanics is wide versus deep. A mechanic is wide if it has multiple independent aspects that need to be taught separately. A mechanic is deep if at least one aspect of the mechanic has a lot of room for exploration. And by aspect, I'm meaning some sort of research or interaction of the mechanic. An example of a deep mechanic would be pushing boxes. Even vanilla Sokoban can have really easy to extremely hard levels just based on block pushing. Most mechanics are something at least somewhat wide. Two levels under a wide mechanic can have similar difficulty but focus on different aspects of the mechanic, and it wouldn't make sense to put them sequentially based on that. In Compress Space's case, space folding is at least a wide mechanic. It could have simple interactions like the one on the left, where you fold the gap and then you push the block across, which is a natural interaction. And unnatural interactions is the one on the left, where repeatedly folding vertically into a single line, and then you jump over it and you unfold it to get a huge vertical height boost. So this is a really weird niche interaction that is very hard to teach. So how can we ensure proper tutorialization across a whole host of aspects such as this? In other words, mechanics are not an effective unit for tutorialization. In fact, most puzzle games teach mechanics in a very small scope. They have a very simple level where you can do at most one interaction with the mechanic, and then subsequent levels introduce more interactions slowly. So puzzle games tend to teach mechanics on the interaction level. So what if I made an interaction level difficulty chart? So before we proceed, let's define what an interaction is. I'm saying that interaction is any specific action or behavior that a mechanic allows for. An interaction can involve one or more mechanics. Here is an example of a single mechanic interaction. Pushing the box only involves the box mechanic. Here is an example of an interaction with multiple mechanics. I'm creating a gap by horizontal folding and then pushing the box and letting it fall to clear the way. So this utilizes three mechanics: horizontal folding, the boxes, and gravity. As for how I actually make interaction charts, I basically just went through each mechanic I had across those 50 levels. Then for each mechanic I listed the interactions involving that mechanic, and then went through all the levels, and for each level I listed each interaction the level utilizes and the difficulty level for it. And if the difficulty was 0, then it would be a tutorial level, and 100 for the max difficulty. And instead of generating the charts by hand, I made an editor tool for programmatically generating the interaction charts. So this is the editor tool I made for dealing with the interaction charts. It is fully data driven. I'm representing each interaction as a scriptable object, which is a Unity specific asset format for storing data. This is the one for the laser mechanic, And as we can see, it lists the interactions for the mechanic. There are 7 interactions here, one of which is the laser activates power source interaction, which involves the laser mechanic and the laser power source mechanic. This is a multi-mechanic interaction. Similarly, there's an interaction valves block laser, which only involves the laser mechanic. I'm not representing valves as a mechanic in the game currently, but you could. Similarly, this is the scriptable object for the black hole mechanic. It lists 5 interactions, and we can see that all of the interactions involve the laser mechanic. So we can assume that the black hole mechanic tends to interact a lot with the laser mechanic. Now, as for the levels, I also have a scriptable object per level. This is the one for the laser into fold 1 level. And we can see for each level I'm listing the interactions utilized by the level. This level utilizes 3 interactions: move into fold by vertical fold, move bend laser into fold through black hole, bend laser through hole interaction. And for each interaction I'm also listing the difficulty the level utilizes it in. So these 2 interactions, the level is utilizing them as 0 difficulty, so the laser into fold 1 level, it could be thought of as the tutorial level for these. The other interaction, bend laser through hole interaction, is present at a difficulty of 9. So this level is actually testing the interaction at a higher difficulty. So this is not a tutorial level for this interaction. And we can see the charts on the left. Each line or curve is the difficulty chart for a particular interaction. For example, this is the one for the bend laser through hole interaction, and the points on the chart represent levels. So this is the one for the level 47, which is laser into fold 1. This is the one for the level 51, which is laser into fold 2. And the height or the value of the chart at a particular level is the difficulty for that interaction. So this level, laser into fold 1, has the interaction bend laser through hole at a difficulty of 9. And we can see the progression of the interaction bend laser through hole throughout this chart. It started at 0 difficulty in this level, black hole light bending 1, and then progressed to 3 difficulty in this level, black hole light bending 2, and then continued, and we can it peaked at the difficulty of 9 in this level, laser into fold 1, and after peaking it was present in this level at difficulty 8, laser into fold 2. So as we can see, the interaction chart gives us a view of the interactions progression in difficulty throughout a sequence of levels. So I'm using several notations here. You can see that for this interaction, some of the points are square shaped while some are circle shaped, and some of the lines are filled while some are dotted. In my game, there are levels that are optional and ones that are in the critical path. The ones in the critical path are represented with a circle shape and a filled line, and the ones in the optional path are with the square shape and with a dotted line. So this level, no umbrella, has a square shape and is an optional level. Optional levels can afford to have much higher difficulty, so it's worth using different notation for them to see if any spike in the chart is due to an optional level or not in the case for my game. Another bit of notation I'm using are these concentric circles. So this level, laser parallel fold, utilizes multiple interactions which are represented by these concentric circles. If you look at the level, then we can see that lists 3 interactions, each of which are at 0 difficulty. Now if I do these points normally, then these points would overlap each other, and I would have no way to know that this point if it had this single circle belong to one interaction or multiple interactions easily. So when the level has multiple interactions at the same difficulty level, then I just draw the points bigger so that I can visually see that this level has multiple interactions. And if I hover on them, I can and find out which interaction it is. So that's just a little bit of notation to make it easier. Now these are the interaction charts for the laser mechanic, and all of the interactions here involve the laser mechanic in some way, but these levels could also involve other mechanics, and it would be helpful to visualize that. So the tool also does that. So if I turn that on, it will visualize those mechanics as well, and it's a bit of a mess, but I'll try to explain. So the interaction charts or curves with the squiggly lines happen to be interactions that don't involve the laser mechanic. For example, this interaction chart is for the gates block fold interaction, which only utilizes the gate. This one is for the gates open when powered interaction, which also utilizes the gate. and none of these involve the laser. And this level utilizes the laser interaction, laser into fold 2, and several non-laser interactions such as the gates block fold, gates open and powered, and gates out of fold through hole interaction. So with this, we can see which other mechanic, a given mechanic or interaction, tends to appear with across your level sequence. However, as you can see, it's quite visually messy and hard to understand. There is actually a better chart format for this, for tracking this thing specifically, which I will get to a bit later in the talk. Now, interaction charts have several traits that I've observed while trying to use them. I've said before that the difficulty charts in puzzle games tend to follow the saw or sine wave pattern, where it starts low, increases, peaks at the end of the set of levels, and then the whole arcing pattern repeats across the rest of the level sequence for the whole game. Now, interaction charts also follow a similar arc shape, however, not quite in the same way as normal difficulty charts. For example, for the laser mechanic, these are the interaction charts, and this one, what laser can fold, starts at this level, level 30, at difficulty of 0, and then it reaches its peak in this level, laser parallel fold 2, at a difficulty of 6, but it continued to be used beyond that level, beyond that point, at the same difficulty level in laser fold 3, or at a lower difficulty level in of 3 at backflip laser. And what's interesting is that there's another interaction, lasers activate power source, that is utilized in level 43, and you can see the level 43, this interaction follows a different path. It is introduced at 0 difficulty in black hole light emitting 2, and then used alongside the a laser can fold interaction in the backflip laser level, and then continues to be used and reaches the peak of difficulty 8 in swapperoo level, the swapperoo level. So by plotting all the interaction charts for all interactions for a given mechanic, in this case the laser, we can see the introduction, tutorialization, and the growth of a single interaction throughout its level sequence, which is level 30 to level 61. Alongside other interactions, we can also see how they're combining with each other. So this is how interaction charts let you visualize the player's knowledge progression across a given sequence of levels. Now, I've said before that interaction charts only have points for the levels that the interaction or mechanic is using. For the black hole mechanic, this is the set of levels. Now, assuming you're grouping your levels by mechanic, then the interaction charts for a given mechanic would exist only within that group in most cases. And we can definitely see that the black hole mechanic X group is this, and it only exists within this group. Let's look at a mechanic that doesn't do that. So this is the interaction chart for the blocker box, or the pushable or yeetable box that I've shown a bit while ago, and we can see that there's a lot of interactions, and it looks a bit more chaotic than the previous one, and it also involves a lot of optional levels than the previous one. But let's ignore that. We can see that the most of the levels for the blocker box mechanic are located in this range, level 13 to level 29. However, there's a single level, no umbrella, which utilizes the blocker box mechanic. It utilizes the box pull, box push, and the close horizontal gap and push interactions involving the box. Now, if we see the other interactions present in this level, we'll see this one. So wall blocks laser. So the blocker box mechanic, despite mostly being used in this group, is also present in this group, and also the laser mechanic. And if we go back to the laser level interaction charts, then we can see that the laser span of levels also involves level 40 here. Now, when a given mechanic exists beyond its initial set of levels, then this means that the mechanic has interactions beyond beyond the initial scope I planned for it. In this case, the box had additional interactions with lasers, so that's why it showed up beyond its group in a level involving lasers. Interaction charts have several other traits that can provide further insight. For example, the span of an interaction chart tells you the span of levels the given interaction is present in. For example, this interaction, pen laser through hole, starts at level 41 and ends at level 51, so it is present in the levels in the span. And this interaction, lasers activate power source, starts at level 42 and then aids in level 46. So that's a level 42 to 46 is span for this interaction, and we can see the spans of each interaction, and we can see how they overlap. So we can better keep track of which interactions we are introducing and how many interactions we are trying to force on the player at a given level. Another interesting trait of interaction charts is the number of points in the chart. The more points, the more levels the interaction is used in. For example, this interaction, bend laser through hole, is used in 5 levels, whereas this interaction, bend laser into fold through black hole, is used in 2 levels. Consider some extreme cases. For example, if the interaction chart only has 1 point, for example, this interaction, bend laser out of fold through hole, is present in the laser into fold 2 level at 0 difficulty. So this is the only level with this interaction. So maybe it's either a gimmicky interaction, or maybe we just haven't managed to explore it enough. The shape of the curve is also of interest. For example, this interaction, atomic lux laser, only has a flat curve. So maybe we could introduce new levels, easier and harder levels, to make the arc more curvier. Or this interaction chart, bend multiple laser through same hole, has a very sharp rise from 0 to 6. So maybe we can introduce some intermediate levels to smoothen out the curve, or add more levels after this to make the curve longer. Regardless, by plotting it in interaction chart, we can clearly see cases like this where we can expand the game further. So what is the benefit of this whole approach? The first is better understanding. By breaking down each level in terms of interactions, we get a clear idea of what each level requires / teaches, and this lends to identify gaps or spikes in the player's knowledge progression, and then add levels or reorder them to smooth out the curve. Another benefit is that we can visualize the player's knowledge progression across a given level sequence, across multiple interactions, and see how they combine across these levels. And we can also see which mechanics or interactions a given mechanic often appears with. Another big benefit is that this is fully data driven. If I see issues in progression, I can reorder levels and regenerate the charts. And also the shape of the interaction charts give me a guide for how I should be organizing the level. For reference, this is how the interaction chart looked when I just had a random assortment of levels. As you can see, it's all over the place as expected. But when I made this interaction chart tool, I knew that I'd be expecting to see arcs like this, and I simply just kept on reordering the levels until I could get the arcs to look nice. And then if I found any gaps in the interactions, like it didn't start at a low enough difficulty to teach properly, then I would make more levels. So utilizing that, I could easily organize my set of 50 levels. The other thing is that listing interactions for each level gives you a lot of data, and that data can be used for more than just interaction charts. For example, since we know the interactions for each level and the mechanics a given interaction uses, we can generate a puzzle matrix. And we don't have to stop there. We can generate an interaction matrix. That is, instead of pairing mechanics, we can pair interactions. This gave me an 80x80 matrix, which is too large to be useful, but let's try something smaller. We make an interaction matrix for a single mechanic. That is, we make every possible pair of interactions for that mechanic. This gives a quick rundown of possible realizations of a single mechanic. We can also try generate the interaction matrix for a pair of mechanics. So this gives us an idea of all possible ways we can combine two mechanics together. So for example, the bend laser interaction paired with the move hole to bend light out interaction for the black hole in about 2 levels. So the data from interaction charts can be used in more than just matrices. So this is what I'm calling a mechanic level evolution chart for the laser mechanic. And the way this works is that when the mechanic is paired with a new different mechanic that we haven't seen before so far in this level sequence, the chart goes up. For example, for the laser mechanic, it occurs first in this level, laser parallel fold, and the chart goes up by 1 level there. And then in this level, straight shot, it is paired with the new mechanic blocker box, and then in the next level, no umbrella, it is paired with the black hole and laser power source mechanic. So we can see that while the first occurrence of another mechanic with this laser mechanic increases the height of the chart, subsequent appearances of the same mechanic are represented via checkered squares, whereas the first occurrence is represented via field square, and the subsequent occurrences do not increase the height of the chart. So basically the chart is only increases in height when we pair the mechanic with a new mechanic that we haven't seen before. for reference, let's look at the evolution charts for other mechanics. For example, the pushable box mechanic or blocker box. So it occurs first in the common ground level, and alongside the gate and switch mechanics. And as we can see that the mechanic is paired quite often with the gate and switches. And then on subsequent levels, it is paired with the horizontal folding, vertical folding, horizontal fold blocker, relay stations, and so on. So as we saw in the interaction charts, we could visualize which other mechanics it was present with, but it was very hard and messy to follow. This is a clearer format for analyzing how which mechanics a given mechanic appears with. Hence, I'm calling it the mechanical level evolution chart, because it charts the growth of the mechanic. So this is useful for figuring out how you're pacing the mechanic and how often when you are introducing or combining the mechanic with other mechanics across your level sequence. And this is another chart format that I'm calling the interaction level evolution chart. It is the same idea as the mechanical evolution chart, however this is for interactions. So this is for the blocker box mechanic, and the chart here goes up every time we have an interaction that we have not seen before utilizing the blocker box mechanic. For example, it was first seen in this level, the common ground 1, and we started with the box push interaction, the gates open when powered interaction, the box gravity fall interaction, and the box activate switch interaction. And then in the next level that we're seeing that it is paired with more new interactions such as box blocks fold, cross gaps, box pull, and so on. So this is a pacing tool to keep track of when you're introducing new interactions involving a given mechanic. Now, in comparison to the mechanical level evolution chart, this will be much taller because there are more interactions than mechanics. It's more granular. Both are useful for pacing and give you different ideas about different aspects of how you're pacing the levels. Another benefit is validation. We have difficulty values for each level across multiple interactions. So we can write code that does basic validation. For example, we can check if the first occurrence of interaction is a tutorial at 0 difficulty. We can check if any tutorial level tries to introduce multiple mechanics, and so on. So this is a basic sanity check, but the data-driven approach is what allows us to do this. Data also doesn't have to come from interaction charts. For example, they can come from analytics. We can estimate the completion time of a level based on how many interactions it has, and chart it alongside the actual completion times taken from analytics. So I'm using a simple formula for that. Here I'm estimating the difficulty based on the interactions. I have a flat base difficulty and then add to it based on how many interactions the level has. So this gives a very bad approximation of difficulty, but it gives it in terms of the complexity of the level, the amount of interactions it uses. The accuracy doesn't matter, the shape does. So I plot it, and what I'm actually looking for is if the spikes of the curve align with the spikes in the actual analytics data. The red one is my estimate, and the green or blue one are the correct ones from the data. We can see that it sort of aligns in some cases, but on particular levels it is much higher. And we can see that for this level the estimate is much higher than what it actually is. So maybe my perception of the level and this actual difficulty is different. So what are the issues with this? First thing is, since it is a chart, it requires a linear sequence of levels. But this doesn't mean that you can have a linear path. As said before, my game has a critical path with optional levels as branches. And I just create a linear sequence by taking the critical path and then adding the optional levels. For example, this is level 24, level 25, then some sequence of bonus levels, and then level 26 again. So it's easy if your game is mostly linear. Otherwise, you can still create a chart from some ordering levels, such as grouping them based on a mechanic, then sorting them based on difficulty. Or you can generate a sequence from some graph traversal. The elephant in the room is that leveling interactions takes time. To this, I have to say that you are never at 100% productivity, and the leveling is a low effort task. And I mostly labeled my set of levels when I was commuting from my full-time job. And secondly, you don't have to label everything. You can still get benefits if you label things partially. So to summarize, when should you be using interaction charts? Firstly, when your level structure easily allows for it, i.e. mostly linear, or your mechanics are wide, or you want to better understand pacing and tutorialization across your levels, across multiple mechanics and interactions, or you want to exhaustively explore every combination of interactions and mechanics. By simply thinking of interesting combinations of interactions, we can come up with level ideas. So this can be another tool in your tool set in addition to puzzle matrices. Thank you for listening, and if you have any questions, you can reach out to me on Twitter, or you can check out my games on b-dev.io. Thanks.